Hello, welcome to Behind the Wall. I'm Stan Grant. With the rollout of coronavirus vaccines well underway, some nations have seen the need for inoculations as an opportunity to wield influence through vaccine diplomacy. Two of the biggest producers, India and China, have committed millions of doses to developing nations, and many have already been distributed. Jiang explains.
They're the first COVID-19 vaccines to arrive in Afghanistan. 500,000 doses made in India, a country that's taking on China to supply as many nations as possible.
We call it as a vaccine Maitri, which is, friendship through vaccination.
India says it's dispatched more than 15 million doses to 17 countries, while China claims it's supplying 27 countries. And it's a carefully orchestrated campaign.
When a consignment of vaccines arrives in a country, the ambassador of India or ambassador of China, usually with the leaders of those countries, is there to receive the vaccines. And the diplomats are posting videos and pictures.
Experts say India wants to be recognised for its expertise as a drug maker, while China is hoping to shift perceptions.
Because China has been blamed for the outbreak of this virus, this is a way of saying that China is not a malignant influence on the international system. China, in fact, is a positive contributor to the global community.
This diplomatic rivalry is playing out in the media and online. A report from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute highlights how both sides are spruiking their vaccine programs and discrediting others. China's state-run tabloid, The Global Times, published 20 stories about India's vaccine rollout in January alone.
Many of these were negative. There has been quite a groundswell of kind of Indian netizen activism against those stories.
Each country is distributing several options. India's Serum Institute is manufacturing the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine and hopes to make more than 1 billion doses by the end of the year. Another local candidate has also been approved for emergency use. China is making 2 vaccines, one from the state-owned Sinopharm and the other from company Sinovac Biotech. A handful of countries have granted emergency authorization for the Sinovac shot, but a lack of data has fueled skepticism over its efficacy. For now, options are limited for many developing nations.
Vaccine access is vital, and that without this vaccine drive, there might be really limited supplies for some of these countries.
Both China and India insist their rollouts abroad are not politically motivated. They also have to vaccinate 1 billion of their own citizens. So trying to immunise the world as well is a bold gamble. Sean Manteso, ABC News.
Jiang is the managing editor at ANU's Australia Centre on China in the World, and she joins me now from Canberra. Yun, good to have you with us. What are we seeing here with China? Can this broadly be put under the banner of soft diplomacy, a way of building influence?
Of course. Like all forms of foreign aid, vaccine diplomacy is both for humanitarian assistance purposes and for increasing goodwill and influence, and sometimes with some commercial benefits in as well. So, all humanitarian assistance or foreign aid serve dual or sometimes even 3 different purposes.
But they're only able to do this because there is an opportunity. I mean, the reality is that most of the Western world is monopolising the vaccine. I saw a statistic the other day, 16% of the world's population, 16% of the world's population have 60% of all of the vaccines. So China says not only is there an opportunity, but is this also a moral obligation?
There is certainly opportunity. There is a rising concerns for vaccine nationalism, where rich countries basically hoard the vaccines produced in their territories, while poor countries have a lot of difficulties accessing them. And there's also a lot of concerns for the scramble for vaccine, where rich countries try to outbid each other to get vaccines, while again, the poor population of the world is left behind. Now, China does have an advantage in this as well, in that compared to countries such as the United States or even the European Union, China has managed the caseloads quite well, relatively, right now, so that what it can do is that it can afford a slower rollout domestically, and at the same time give other countries earlier access. Well, countries such as the United States, because, with 500,000 people already dead and case numbers still there, they can't do that. They really have to prioritize their own country first.
Yun, there is an interesting side battle here, and that is between India and China. Now, we know that India and China are old rivals. They've been to war and they clashed again just last year on their border. How much is this a direct competition, if you like, between India and China, and is China more likely to prevail?
You're quite right. India is another big manufacturer of pharmaceuticals, including vaccines. So in certain countries, especially countries where they both feel like they are part of within their spheres of influence, there is a competition there for vaccine. But we should also remember that such competition for influence actually has overall a positive outcome for global health. Without such competition for influence, for vaccine diplomacy, it's quite possible that poor countries will receive vaccine later. And now that there is this strategic competition, this competition for influence, those countries are probably getting vaccines earlier than otherwise. Of course, I'm assuming, everyone's assuming that those vaccines are of good quality and the rollout is smooth and successful.
Yun, how does this fit in with a broader strategy here from China? We know the Belt and Road Initiative is about also developing contacts and connections with other countries through investment in infrastructure. We see the use of foreign aid in places like the Pacific. We know that China is very heavily involved in Africa. How much of this fits into that broader strategy of positioning China as a big player in the world, potentially a counter to the United States?
Well, certainly China wants to be seen as a responsible international citizen. And one of the criticism of China in earlier days was that it has not been pulling its own weight relative to the size of population and economy. And now that it is taking some leadership in international forums, of course, there are also criticisms that it is perhaps going into a direction that is not what other countries want. So it is part of the broader strategy to become more powerful, to be seen as a good international citizen, and to be more influential. One example is Belt and Road, as you mentioned, and the most recently released, the white paper on foreign aid, mentions both the Belt and Road as well as COVID response. So those are all part of its strategy to become more influential in the international system.
And just a final thought from you, Yun. I know there's a lot of blowback, pushback against China right now, and you alluded to some of that in your last answer. There have been calls, for instance, for a boycott of the Winter Olympics in China next year, the most latest coming from Canada. The response to that was really interesting, because China is now accusing the Five Eyes, those are those 5 countries that work together to share intelligence, the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand and Great Britain, of being a white supremacist organisation, of accusing the West of being racist. Are we also seeing that starting to play into this now, to the extent that China could present itself not as a global superpower necessarily, but a superpower of the other side of the world, the non-Western world?
It has always used that tactic. It has always tried to be seen as a leader of the developing world. So it is not new. But on the white supremacy criticism, of course, criticism of China's human rights record in terms of in Xinjiang, in Hong Kong, and in Tibet and other areas, such issues, it doesn't just come from Western countries. It does also come from other countries as well. So I think that argument doesn't fly very well.
Yun, always good to talk to you. Thank you again for sharing your insights with us.
Thank you.